I used to think betrayal arrived loudly. I imagined it would come with shouting, broken glass, doors slammed hard enough to shake the walls. I thought a person would feel it coming the way you feel thunder before a storm, deep in the bones, warning you to find shelter. But betrayal did not arrive that way for me. It came quietly, wearing my son's face, carrying the same key I had once placed in his small hand when he was old enough to come home from school alone. My name is Evelyn Carter, and for most of my life, I believed I was a fortunate woman. Not wealthy, not famous, not protected by anything the world would envy, but fortunate in the ways that mattered to me. I had a modest house with yellow curtains in the kitchen, a rose bush by the front steps, and a son named Daniel who used to run through the hallway shouting, "Mom, look what I made." As if every drawing, every crooked clay bowl, every paper airplane was proof that joy could be built from almost nothing. For years, that was enough. I did not know then that the greatest loss would not be money, or a house, or even health. It would be the loss of the person I thought my son was. Daniel was 7 when his father left. I remember the morning with terrible clarity, not because there was a dramatic goodbye, but because there was. Robert packed 2 suitcases while Daniel slept, kissed the top of my head like a man leaving for work, and said, "I can't do this anymore." Just like that. Marriage, family, promises, all folded into 2 suitcases and carried out before sunrise. Daniel came downstairs an hour later in dinosaur pajamas, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Where's Dad?" I made pancakes because I did not know how else to answer. That was the first morning I learned how to swallow my own fear so my child could eat breakfast without tasting it. I told him his father needed some time away, and Daniel nodded as though adults were strange creatures who often disappeared. Then he climbed into my lap even though he was getting too big for it and pressed his syrupy fingers against my cheek. "I'll stay with you, Mom," he said. He meant it then. I know he meant it then. That is one of the cruelest things about remembering love after betrayal. The good memories do not vanish. They remain, bright and stubborn, making the darkness harder to explain. Daniel was not always cold. He was not always selfish. He was once the boy who saved half his Halloween candy for me because he heard me say I liked peanut butter cups. He was once the teenager who sat beside my hospital bed after my gallbladder surgery, pretending not to be scared while asking the nurse if I needed more blankets. He was once the young man who hugged me at his college graduation so tightly that my hat slipped sideways and whispered, "I couldn't have done this without you." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? After Robert left, money became a language I spoke with anxiety. I learned to stretch one paycheck across 2 weeks until it was almost transparent. I clipped coupons at the kitchen table while Daniel did homework beside me. I watered down soup and called it stew. I wore the same winter coat for 11 years and told people it was because they didn't make them like that anymore. When Daniel needed new shoes, I bought them. When he needed field trip money, I found it. When he wanted a used guitar at 15, I cleaned offices on Saturdays for 3 months. He never knew that part. There is a difference between wanting security and worshiping comfort. I did not recognize when my son crossed that line. He studied business in college. I took extra shifts so he would not drown in loans. I told him education was an investment, but the truth was simpler. I wanted doors to open for him that had never opened for me. When his classmates went home for winter break, I drove 3 hours through sleet to bring him a box of homemade lasagna, wool socks, and a grocery card I could barely afford. He hugged me in the dorm parking lot, embarrassed but grateful, and said, "One day I'll take care of you, Mom. You won't have to worry anymore." Those words became a room inside my heart. One day I'll take care of you. I did not raise him for repayment. I need to say that clearly. Love is not a loan. Motherhood is not a contract with interest, but promises matter, especially promises made to someone who has carried you through storms. When a child becomes an adult and says, "Rest now, I've got you," something in a tired parent unclenches. You believe not because you are greedy, but because you are exhausted. But slowly, the conversations changed. He no longer asked about my day first. He asked whether I had considered selling the house. "Mom, the market is strong right now," he said one Sunday while slicing roast chicken at my kitchen table. "This place is old. Maintenance is only going to get worse." "This place is home," I said. "Home can be anywhere." I smiled because I thought he was being practical. "Easy to say when you didn't scrub crayon off these walls." He laughed, but it was thinner than laughter used to be. "Sentiment is expensive." The words landed softly, but they landed. Sentiment is expensive. I looked around the kitchen at the yellow curtains I had sewn from clearance fabric, the little notch in the doorframe where Daniel's height marks climbed year by year, the chipped blue mug he gave me for Mother's Day when he was 9. To him, maybe it was all outdated wood and aging pipes. To me, it was evidence that we had survived. That was the first time I felt it, a small coldness under my ribs. Not fear exactly. More like hearing a window rattle in a house you thought was sealed. Still, I brushed it aside. People become blunt when they enter the working world. They mistake sharpness for wisdom. I told myself Daniel was trying to help. By 30, he had married Claire. The first time Claire walked through my house, she looked at the wallpaper in the dining room and said, "Vintage can be charming if it's intentional." I laughed because I thought it was a joke. Then my health began changing. Before a crisis, doctors say those words calmly, as if crises send polite invitations. Daniel came with me to one appointment after I called him twice. He sat beside me checking emails on his phone while Dr. Patel explained that my blood pressure needed monitoring and that living alone might become risky if the dizzy spells continued. Daniel looked up then. "So she shouldn't be by herself." "I'm saying support would be beneficial," Dr. Patel replied. In the parking lot, Daniel was quiet. I thought he was worried. I almost reached for his hand the way I used to when he was a boy crossing the street. Finally, he said, "Maybe it's time." "For what?" "To sell the house and move in with us." The words should have comforted me. They were the answer to years of whispered hope, but something about the way he said it made my heart hesitate. Not, "Mom, I want you with me." Not, "We'll make room." He said it like a business decision finally ready to execute. "Claire is okay with that?" I asked. "We've discussed it." That was all. We've discussed it, not dreamed of it, not hoped for it, discussed. Like my aging body was a property issue, a line item, a manageable inconvenience, still I chose gratitude. Sometimes we mistake the absence of warmth for maturity. Sometimes we accept crumbs from the people we love and call it a meal because hunger makes us generous. But I was tired. That is the truth beneath many bad decisions. Not stupidity, not weakness, tiredness. One afternoon, Daniel found me sitting on the basement stairs, crying because I could not carry a laundry basket up without pain. He knelt in front of me, and for a moment I saw my boy again. His face softened. He took the basket from my hands. "Mom," he said, "let me help. You took care of me my whole life. Let me take care of you now." It was. The promise returned, polished and familiar. I wanted to believe so badly that believing felt like breathing, so I sold the house. Even now, writing those words feels like setting down a stone I have carried too long. I sold the house for less than Daniel said it was worth because the first buyer backed out and I did not have the energy to start over. Daniel handled much of the paperwork. Claire knew people, recommended people, arranged people. I signed where they pointed. They told me I was lucky. They told me timing mattered. They told me moving before winter was wise. I kept only what could fit into one bedroom. On the last day, I stood in the empty kitchen and listened to the refrigerator hum. Empty rooms have a way of telling the truth. Without furniture, without photographs, without curtains, the house seemed smaller and more vulnerable. I pressed my palm against the doorframe where Daniel's height marks still showed faintly beneath paint. 3 feet, 7 inches. Age 5, 4 feet, 2 inches. Age 8, 5 feet, 11 inches. Age 16, I touched the last mark and whispered, "I hope I did right by you." Daniel called from the driveway. "Mom, we need to go." His voice echoed through the bare rooms. My room was at the back, near the laundry area. Daniel called it the guest suite, though it had once been an office. Claire had removed the desk and replaced it with a narrow bed, a dresser, and a small armchair. My old quilt looked out of place there, too soft and faded against the gray walls. "It's perfect," I said. Claire smiled. "We tried to make it comfortable without overcrowding the space." Overcrowding. A word can smile and still show teeth. At first, I tried to be the easiest person in the world to care for. I woke early but moved quietly. I bought my own groceries when Daniel insisted it was unnecessary. I folded towels, wiped counters, watered plants, and pretended not to notice when Claire refolded the towels after me. I told myself every household has its rhythm, and I was the newcomer. Gratitude, I believed, meant taking up as little space as possible. Daniel seemed pleased in the beginning. He drove me to appointments. He installed a handrail near the back steps. He told friends, "Mom lives with us now," in a tone that sounded almost proud. At church, people patted my shoulder and said, "You're blessed to have a son like that." "I am," I replied. But blessings can become cages so gradually that by the time you feel the bars, you have already thanked the person who built them. The first rule was about the thermostat. Claire runs cold, Daniel said. Let's not keep adjusting it. I had not realized turning it up 2 degrees was a problem. I started wearing sweaters inside. The second rule was about guests. It's not that we don't want your friends here, Claire explained, but our schedules are unpredictable and privacy is important. I stopped inviting my friend Marlene for tea. The third rule was about noise. The television carries through the vents, Daniel said one evening, standing in my doorway. Maybe headphones after 8. I bought headphones. Still, Daniel could be kind. That made everything harder. Some mornings he brought me coffee before work, exactly the way I liked it, 1 cream and no sugar. On my birthday, he gave me a soft blue cardigan and kissed my forehead. When my knee swelled badly, he sat with me in urgent care for 4 hours, scrolling his phone but staying. I collected these moments like proof in a trial no one else knew was happening. See, I told myself, he loves me. He is busy. He is stressed. He is not his worst moments. A mother can defend her child against the world, but the final and fiercest defense is often against her own instincts. The instincts were speaking by then. They spoke when Daniel lowered his voice in the kitchen as soon as I entered. They spoke when Claire's smile disappeared the moment she turned away. They spoke when envelopes from the sale of my house disappeared into Daniel's office for organization. And he assured me everything was safer in one managed account. Name is still attached, he said. I'm just helping simplify. I wanted to see paperwork. I wanted to ask more questions, but he looked hurt when I hesitated. Mom, after everything, you don't trust me? Trust is a holy word in a family. Once someone says it, you feel almost sinful questioning them. So I apologized. The account became another quiet room I was not invited to enter. One evening in February, I heard Daniel and Claire arguing. I was in the hallway carrying a laundry basket, moving slowly because my knee was stiff. Their bedroom door was not fully closed. She can't stay forever, Claire said. I froze. Daniel answered too softly for me to catch every word. Claire's voice sharpened. You said there would be a plan. You said once the house sold, we'd have options. The laundry basket pressed into my hip. My hands went cold. Daniel murmured again, then Claire said, I'm not being heartless, I'm being realistic. We are not turning our life into a nursing home. I backed away before they could see me. That night, Daniel came to my room and asked if I needed anything. His face was calm. Mine was a mask I had spent a lifetime perfecting. Sweetheart, I said. I'm fine. Fine is the word women of my generation learned to use when the truth would inconvenience someone. After that, I began paying closer attention. Not with suspicion exactly, but with a tenderness bruised into alertness. I noticed how Daniel flinched when I mentioned money. I noticed Claire checking the calendar whenever I had a doctor's appointment, as if each appointment was another theft of their time. I noticed that my mail arrived opened once, then twice. Daniel said it must have torn in the slot. There was no mail slot. When I pointed that out, he laughed too quickly. I mean in transit. A small thing. Another small thing. Small things are the pebbles before the landslide. In March, Daniel suggested I consider an assisted living community. He said it over dinner, between bites of salmon Claire had cooked with lemon and herbs. The table looked beautiful. White plates, linen napkins, a vase of tulips. Outside, rain-stitched silver lines down the windows. Inside, my son placed a brochure beside my glass. I thought we could tour this place Saturday, he said. I looked at the smiling, gray-haired woman on the brochure cover. She was painting in a sunlit room, surrounded by other smiling women. Everyone in brochures looks cared for. No one looks abandoned. Tour it for who? I asked, though I knew. For you, Mom, just to see. Set down her fork. It has activities, transportation, medical staff nearby. I thought I was living here. You are, Daniel said quickly. For now, but we need to think long-term. Long-term. Another phrase that sounded responsible until you realized it meant, not here, not with us, not our burden. I swallowed. Can I afford that? Daniel looked at Claire. Claire looked at her plate. We'd figure it out, he said. Using the money from my house, his jaw tightened. Mom, we've talked about this. That money is part of the overall plan. Plan, the room went still. Rain tapped the windows. Somewhere the refrigerator hummed in its rich, expensive quiet. Daniel smiled, but his eyes did not. The plan where you're safe. Safe, there are words people use when they want control to sound like love. I did not tour the community that Saturday. I said I was too tired, which was true, though not in the way he thought. Daniel was annoyed. Claire was silent. For 2 days, the house became polite enough to hurt. Doors closed gently. Cups were placed in the sink carefully. No one raised a voice. No one had to. Coldness can be louder than shouting, Marlene noticed when she called. You sound far away, she said. I'm sitting right here. You know what I mean. I looked toward my closed bedroom door. I think I made a mistake. Was a pause. Marlene and I had known each other for 30 years. She had seen me poor, tired, proud, foolish, brave. She did not rush to comfort me with lies. Do you feel safe? She asked. The question startled me. Of course, I said automatically. Then I looked around my room. My quilt, my pill organizer, my box of photographs, my purse hanging from the chair. Safe should have felt like warmth. Instead, it felt like needing permission to breathe. I don't know, I whispered. Then start keeping records, Marlene said. Records. Dates, conversations, money, mail, anything that feels wrong. I almost laughed. It sounded dramatic, like something from one of my detective shows. But after we hung up, I found a small notebook in my dresser, the one with flowers on the cover that Daniel had given me years ago. I opened to the first page and wrote the date. Then I wrote dinner, assisted living brochure, asked about house money. Daniel said overall plan. Hands shook, writing it down made it real. When I asked why, he sighed. You're becoming paranoid. That word cut deeper than anger, paranoid. It turned concern into illness. It made my questions sound like symptoms. I stood in his office doorway, gripping my cane, staring at the filing cabinet where my life had apparently been rearranged for my own good. I just want my papers, I said. You'll have them. Scanning everything. I didn't ask you to. Helping. Helping doesn't usually require hiding things. His face hardened. For one breath, I saw a stranger, then he looked away. You're tired, we'll talk tomorrow. Became the shelf where Daniel placed every truth he did not want to hand me. We did not talk tomorrow. Instead, he brought me coffee the next morning and kissed my forehead. The tenderness confused me so badly I almost apologized again. That was the pattern. Push, chill, kindness. Silence, push again. It kept me off balance, always reaching for the good sun between glimpses of the other one. I began having trouble sleeping. At night, the house settled around me with clicks and sighs. I listened to Daniel and Claire moving upstairs, their footsteps crossing above my ceiling. Sometimes I heard low voices, sometimes laughter, sometimes nothing at all, which was worse because silence gave my imagination room to sharpen knives. In April, Daniel asked me to sign a document. He placed it in front of me at breakfast with a pen, as casually as if asking me to sign a birthday card. What is it? Just authorization so I can handle some financial calls for you without dragging you into every detail. I reached for my glasses. The print was dense. Legal words marched across the page in lines too small for a tired morning. I want to read it first. Of course, he said, but the way he checked his watch made the words shrink. Claire entered the kitchen in workout clothes, holding a travel mug. She saw the papers and stopped. Oh, good, you're doing that, I asked. Daniel shot her a look. She smiled. Just the practical stuff. Stuff. I folded the document and said, I'll look at it later. His mouth tightened. Mom, I have calls today. This would make things easier. For who? The question surprised both of us. He leaned back. What's that supposed to mean? It means I want to understand what I'm signing. Everything I've done for you, you think I'd trick you? There it was again. Trust used like a lock. My hands trembled, but I kept the paper. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Left for work without kissing my forehead. I carried the document to my room and called Marlene. She gave me the number of a retired attorney from her church, Mr. Howard, who still reviewed things for friends. 2 days later, Marlene drove me to meet him at a coffee shop across town. I told Daniel I was going to lunch. It felt strange to lie to my son. It felt stranger that telling the truth seemed unsafe. Mrs. Carter, he said, this gives your son broad authority, very broad, to pay bills, to access accounts, make decisions, transfer assets in certain circumstances. It's not something I'd sign without independent counsel and revisions. My stomach dropped. He said it was practical. It is practical, Mr. Howard said, for the person receiving authority. Should I do? Ask for copies of everything, get clarity on where your house proceeds went, and do not sign anything under pressure. Under pressure, that phrase followed me home. Daniel was waiting in the kitchen when Marlene dropped me off. He glanced past me toward her car, then back at my face. Nice lunch. Yes. With Marlene? Yes. His eyes fell to the folder in my hand. The air changed. You showed someone the papers, he said. It was not a question. I asked for advice. His face flushed. From who? A friend of Marlene's. He laughed once sharply. Unbelievable. I wanted to understand. No, you wanted to embarrass me. You wanted to make me look like I'm taking advantage of you. That's not what you're doing. Why are you angry? The words left my mouth before fear could stop them. Daniel stared at me. For a second, the kitchen seemed to tilt. Claire appeared in the doorway, silent, watching. "I have rearranged my life for you," Daniel said, each word clipped. "I have opened my home, I have driven you places, I have handled your bills, and this is the thanks I get." Guilt rose in me automatically, old and obedient. Then something else rose beneath it, memory. Not the soft memories this time. The hard ones. Me working Saturdays for his guitar. Me eating toast for dinner so he could have lunch money. Me sitting awake beside his fever. Me signing loan papers with shaking hands so his future could be larger than mine. I had rearranged my life for him before he knew what life cost. "I am thankful," I said quietly, "but gratitude is not permission." Inhaled, Daniel's expression went flat. "Maybe this arrangement isn't working." It was exposed at last. Not shouted, not final, but real enough to stand in the room with us. I nodded because crying would have pleased the wrong part of him. Maybe not. For the first time in months, I felt something solid beneath my fear. It was not strength yet. It was the memory of strength. I wanted to confront him immediately, but Mr. Howard advised patience. "Documentation first," he said. "Emotion later." I waited. Waiting can be its own form of torture. Every shared meal became theater. Daniel asked if I wanted more potatoes. Claire asked if I had taken my medication. I answered politely while knowing that beneath the table of family life, something was rotting. And yet, even then, I loved him. I loved Daniel and I feared him. That contrast became my private prison. In late April, I found the first lock. It was on Daniel's office door, a small silver keypad where a simple knob used to be. I noticed it because I had gone to ask whether he wanted dinner kept warm. My financial papers were still in that room, or at least some of them. The keypad glowed faintly in the hallway, blue and indifferent. When Daniel came home, I asked about it. "Work security," he said. "Confidential files. My papers are in there." I moved them. "Where? I'll get them when you need them." "I need them," smiled tiredly. "Not tonight." A lock inside a house changes the meaning of every door, but fear is sometimes the body recognizing a truth the mind still debates. One morning in May, I woke early to birdsong and the smell of coffee. For a moment before memory returned, I felt peaceful. Sunlight lay across my quilt. My hands ached less than usual. I decided to walk to the corner bakery and buy cinnamon rolls, Daniel's favorite from childhood. It was silly, maybe, but I wanted to build a bridge out of something sweet. In the kitchen, Claire's purse was gone. Daniel's briefcase was gone. The house was quiet. I left a note on the counter, walked to bakery. "Back soon. Love, Mom." Outside, the air was cool and kind. The neighborhood was waking slowly, sprinklers ticking, a dog barking behind a fence, someone's wind chimes trembling in the breeze. I walked with my cane, slow but determined, and for those 20 minutes I allowed myself to imagine repair. Maybe Daniel and I could talk. Maybe fear had exaggerated things. Maybe the withdrawals had explanations. Maybe the promise was bruised, not broken. The bakery smelled of sugar and yeast. I bought 6 cinnamon rolls because Daniel used to eat 2 before they reached the table. The young woman at the register called me ma'am and tucked extra napkins into the bag. Such small kindness can nearly undo you when home has become uncertain. When I returned, balancing the warm bag against my chest, the front door did not open. I tried the key again, nothing. I looked at the lock, confused. My fingers were stiff, so I tried slowly, carefully, the way Daniel had taught me when I first moved in. Insert, turn, lift slightly. Turn again, nothing. A bird called from the maple tree. Somewhere down the street, a car door closed. I laughed once under my breath because the alternative was panic. Maybe I had grabbed the wrong key. Maybe the deadbolt was stuck. Maybe Claire had locked the top latch by mistake. I rang the bell inside. The chime sounded distant and bright. No footsteps came. I rang again. Then I called Daniel. It went to voicemail. Daniel's voicemail greeting played in my ear as I stood on his front porch with a bag of cinnamon rolls cooling against my chest. "Hey, this is Daniel. Leave a message." I waited for the beep, but when it came, I forgot how to speak. For a moment, I was not an old woman locked outside a house. I was a mother standing at the edge of a truth too cruel to name. My hand tightened around my phone. The front door stood inches from me, painted a tasteful dark green Claire had chosen, polished and beautiful and firm. On the other side were my clothes, my medicine, my photographs, my papers, my life. On this side was me. "Daniel," I finally said, my voice thin. "The door won't open. I think something is wrong with the lock. Please call me back." I hung up and tried the key again. Nothing. The deadbolt did not even resist like a stuck lock. It rejected me cleanly, smoothly, as if the key in my hand had never belonged there. That was when I noticed the keypad. It was new. A small black square had been installed above the handle. I stared at it, confused at first, then cold all over. The old lock was still there, but it had been made useless by something newer, smarter, and crueler. A machine had been placed between me and shelter, between me and my son, between a mother and the home she had been promised. I rang the bell again. No answer. I knocked, no answer. Then I stepped back and looked at the upstairs windows. Curtains drawn, silent glass. A pretty house in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of house people pass and imagine happiness inside. I almost called the police right then. But shame stopped me. That is something people do not understand until they have lived it. When someone you love humiliates you, your first instinct is not always anger. Sometimes it is protection. You protect their name before you protect yourself. You imagine neighbors watching from behind curtains. You imagine explaining to a stranger, "My son locked me out." You hear the words before you say them, and they sound impossible, so I waited. I sat on the porch step with the cinnamon rolls beside me. Morning warmed into late morning. The bag grew limp from steam. My knee began to ache. 2 delivery trucks passed. A young mother pushed a stroller along the sidewalk and smiled at me, and I smiled back as if I had chosen to sit outside like any normal person enjoying the weather. Inside, I was breaking. At 10:17, Daniel texted, "Can't talk now." In meetings, I stared at the message. The cruelty of it was not in what he said. It was in what he refused to say. He did not ask if I was okay. He did not ask where I was. He did not say, "I'll fix it." Just meetings. As if my being locked out was a minor inconvenience waiting in line behind his calendar. I typed with shaking fingers. "The lock has been changed." "I can't get inside." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then his reply came. "We need boundaries, Mom. Claire and I decided this arrangement isn't healthy." I read the sentence once, then again, then a third time, because surely words could rearrange themselves into something less monstrous if I gave them enough chances. Boundaries. That was the word he chose for abandonment. I called him immediately. This time he answered. "Daniel." His voice was low, controlled. "Mom, I told you I'm in meetings." "You changed the lock." He exhaled, almost irritated. "I didn't want it to happen this way." "What way?" "You've been refusing to cooperate. You've been going behind my back. You made this house tense for everyone." "I live here." "You were staying here." The difference between those 2 words struck like a slap. Living meant belonging. Staying meant temporary permission. "I sold my home because you asked me to," I said. "You sold it because it made sense. You told me you would take care of me." I tried. "No," I whispered. "You controlled me." Silence. In that silence, I heard the truth breathing. Daniel's voice hardened. "There's a senior residence that has availability. Claire found it. I sent them a deposit." "With whose money?" "Mom, don't start." "With whose money, Daniel?" "That money was meant for your care." "My care." "I am sitting outside your house with no medicine and nowhere to go." "It's not my house. It's our house, mine and Claire, and we can't do this anymore." I looked at the cinnamon rolls beside me, 6 small offerings of love turning cold in a paper bag. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked. He did not answer. That was the answer. My son, the boy who once promised to stay, had planned my exile with enough care to install a new lock, move my papers, contact a residence, and choose a morning when both he and Claire could be gone. It had not been anger. It had not been impulse. It had been strategy. "Where are my things?" I asked. "We packed essentials." "Packed. There are 2 bags in the garage. The garage is locked." "I'll text you the code." He said it so calmly that I almost admired the precision of his cruelty. He had not thrown me into the street completely. No, that would have looked ugly. He had prepared a version of abandonment that could be explained at dinner parties. He could say, "We found Mom a place." He could say, "She became difficult." He could say, "We did everything we could." Often polish betrayal until it looks like responsibility. My voice trembled. "I need my medication. It's in one of the bags." "My documents." "We'll discuss that later." "No, we discuss it now. I have to go." "Don't hang up." He did. For a long moment, I held the silent phone to my ear. Then I lowered it slowly. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break the window beside the door. I wanted to pound my fists against the house until every neighbor came outside and saw what a good son had done. But my body had spent decades learning control. It knew how to stand in storms, how to ration panic, how to survive with dignity when dignity was all that remained. So I breathed. Once. Twice. Then I called Marlene. She answered on the second ring. "Evelyn." I tried to say her name, but it came out as a sound I had never heard from myself, something small and wounded. "What happened?" she asked. He locked me out. It was no gasp, no dramatic disbelief, just a terrible stillness. "Where are you?" "On the porch." "There, I'm coming." Moment she said those words, I began to cry, not because I was saved, not yet, but because someone had heard me and believed me without demanding proof. Betrayal isolates you before it destroys you. It teaches you to doubt your own injury. Marlene's certainty became the first solid plank beneath my feet. Daniel texted the garage code 8 minutes later. I did not move right away. I was afraid of what I would find. Finally, I forced myself up, leaning hard on my cane, and walked around the side of the house. My knee burned. The cinnamon rolls remained on the porch, abandoned like a foolish prayer. The garage opened with a mechanical groan. Inside, near the wall, were 2 black trash bags and 1 small suitcase. Trash bags, 32 years of motherhood, 1 sold house, 1 lifetime of sacrifice, and my son had placed my belongings in trash bags. I stood there looking at them, and something inside me changed, not fully, not dramatically. There was no triumphant music in my heart, but grief has layers, and beneath the top layer of shock, another feeling began to move. It was old, steady, and hard-earned. I had survived Robert leaving. I had survived hunger hidden behind smiles. I had survived hospital bills, lonely nights, second jobs, and the terror of raising a child with no safety net. My son had mistaken my softness for weakness. That was his first mistake. I opened the first bag. Clothes folded badly. My cardigan, nightgowns, socks, a framed photo of Daniel at age 6 wearing a paper crown. I almost laughed at that. Even in his cruelty, he had packed the memory of who he used to be. In the second bag, my medicine was inside a plastic grocery sack, along with toiletries and my old Bible. The suitcase held more clothes, my checkbook, and a folder labeled Mom Misc Miscellaneous. That was what remained of me in his filing system. I searched for the house sale papers, bank records, power of attorney document, anything important. Nothing. Marlene arrived 20 minutes later in her faded red sedan, braking so hard the tires squealed. She got out before the engine stopped. "God," she said when she saw the bags. I tried to speak calmly. "He said he found a senior residence." Marlene's face went white with anger. "Did you agree to go?" "No." "You sign anything?" "No." "Good." She took my arm, not like I was fragile, but like I was someone worth steadying. "Then we are not going to any residence today." "We," she looked at me fiercely. "Yes, we." That word nearly broke me again. We loaded the bags into her car. I took the suitcase myself, though she protested, because I needed to carry something. I needed my body to remember that I was not helpless cargo being moved by other people's decisions. Before we left, I returned to the porch. The cinnamon rolls were still there. I picked up the bag and placed it carefully beside the front door. Then I rang the bell once more, though I knew no one would answer. "I brought your favorite," I whispered. Then I turned away. Marlene drove me to her house. It was smaller than Daniel's, cluttered and warm, with crocheted blankets on the couch and family photos crowded across every shelf. Her kitchen smelled of coffee and toast. Nothing matched, everything welcomed. She helped me settle in the guest room, then made me tea so strong it could have revived the dead. "You need to call Mr. Howard," she said. "I don't want to make this legal." "Evelyn." Her voice softened, but only slightly. "He already made it legal when he took your papers and your money. He's my son." "You are his mother," that did not stop him. Truth hurt more when spoken by someone who loved me. I called Mr. Howard that afternoon. He listened without interrupting, except once to ask, "Did you receive written eviction notice?" "No." "You sign a lease?" "No." "Did you contribute financially?" "I sold my house. The proceeds went into an account Daniel handled." Was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Mrs. Carter, we need to move carefully and quickly." Carefully and quickly. Another contrast. My heart wanted to collapse. My survival needed structure. He told me to write down everything while memory was fresh. The lock, the call, the texts, the bags, the missing documents. He told me not to communicate with Daniel except in writing if possible. He told me to request my records formally. He told me to gather witnesses. The word made me feel like a crime had happened. Maybe it had. That evening, Daniel called 12 times. I did not answer. Then he texted, "You're making this worse." I stared at the screen from Marlene's kitchen table. For years, those words would have sent me apologizing. They would have made me shrink. But something about being locked outside had burned away the fog. I could see the pattern now. He created the wound, then blamed me for bleeding. I typed slowly. "I need all financial records, identification documents, medical papers, and belongings returned immediately. Communicate by text or email only." His response came fast. "You're being dramatic." I sent one sentence. "I am documenting everything." He did not reply for 3 hours. That night I slept badly. Every sound woke me. I dreamed of keys that turned into bones, of doors growing taller as I reached for them, of Daniel as a child calling from behind glass. When morning came, I sat on the edge of Marlene's bed and wept silently into my hands. There is a kind of grief reserved for losing someone who is still alive. It has no funeral, no casseroles, no polite visitors offering sympathy. People ask, "Have you talked to him?" As if conversation can resurrect trust. They say, "Maybe he was overwhelmed." As if exhaustion excuses cruelty planned in advance. I was not just homeless. I was motherless in reverse. The child I had protected had become the person I needed protection from. The next few days moved in a blur of practical humiliation. Marlene drove me to replace documents Daniel still held. Mr. Howard filed letters requesting financial records. I visited the bank where a young manager spoke to me too loudly, as if age had made me deaf instead of betrayed. We discovered my name was on some accounts but not others. Transfers had been made I did not recognize. Payments had gone to the senior residence. There were withdrawals labeled household expenses. Household expenses. I thought of Claire's tulips. The new keypad lock. The expensive coffee machine I was not allowed to touch after Claire said I used too much water. Every discovery was a small death, but each one also gave me back a piece of reality. Proof has power. It turns confusion into evidence. It takes the trembling sentence, "I think something is wrong," and transforms it into "this happened." Finally agreed to meet after Mr. Howard sent a formal notice. We met in a conference room at the public library, because I refused to return to his house and he refused to come to Marlene. Mr. Howard sat beside me. Marlene sat on my other side. Daniel arrived 10 minutes late in a navy suit, carrying a leather folder and wearing the expression of a man deeply inconvenienced by someone else's pain. For one breath, I saw him as a stranger. Then he looked at me, and I saw the boy with syrup on his fingers. Both were true. That was the hardest part. He said, "This has gotten out of hand." I looked at him carefully. "You locked me out. You left. I went to the bakery. You knew things were tense. I knew my son was angry. I did not know he was planning to remove me from his home." Rubbed his forehead. "I was trying to transition you somewhere safer." Putting my clothes in trash bags, his face tightened. Claire packed quickly. Made a sound, but Mr. Howard lifted one hand slightly. I opened my purse and placed the photo of Daniel at age 6 on the table, the one he had packed into the trash bag. In the picture, he wore a paper crown and held up a Mother's Day card covered in crooked hearts. Daniel looked away. "I want you to look at it," I said. "Don't." "No, look at it." He did. "That boy promised me he would never leave me," I said. "That boy cried when his father walked out. That boy knew what abandonment felt like." And somehow he grew into a man who did the same thing, only cleaner, quieter, with better paperwork. His mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, I saw shame flicker, but shame is not repentance. Some people feel shame only because they have been seen. Mr. Howard asked about the documents. Daniel produced some, not all. He claimed he had acted with my best interests in mind. He said I had become difficult, suspicious, emotionally unstable. He said living with me had affected his marriage. He said the senior residence was reputable. He said the money had been used responsibly. Every sentence sounded prepared. Then Mr. Howard asked, "Did Mrs. Carter consent to being moved out?" Daniel hesitated. "Consent matters," Mr. Howard said. The room became very quiet. Daniel looked at me then, really looked, as if seeing not a burden, not a problem, not a fragile old woman to manage, but the mother who had once held him through his nightmares. "I thought," he began, then stopped. I asked, "I thought you'd adjust." The simplicity of it stunned me. He had not expected me to fight. That was his second mistake. "I adjusted my whole life for you," I said. "I adjusted when your father left. I adjusted when money was short. I adjusted when you needed rides, tuition, patience, forgiveness. But I will not adjust to being discarded." Daniel's eyes reddened, but he did not apologize. Not then. The meeting ended with agreements, though not peace. Daniel would return all documents. The bank records would be reviewed. The senior residence deposit would be challenged. My remaining belongings would be collected with witnesses present. Until matters were resolved, he was not to pressure me into signing anything. As we left, Daniel followed me into the hallway. "Mom." I stopped. He looked smaller than he had in the conference room. "You have to understand. Claire and I were drowning." I nodded slowly. "Then you should have asked for help," I said. "You should have told me the truth. Drowning does not give you the right to hold someone else underwater." His face crumpled slightly. I walked away before my love could weaken my boundary. The next month was not inspiring in the way people like stories to be inspiring. There were no sudden miracles. No judge slammed a gavel and restored my life overnight. No son fell to his knees begging forgiveness while music swelled. Real survival is quieter. It is waking up in someone else's guest room and choosing to shower. It is calling agencies even though your voice shakes. It is learning which documents matter. It is admitting you need help without surrendering your dignity. It is eating soup at Marlene's kitchen table while your heart feels too heavy for your body. Mr. Howard connected me with an elder advocacy group. The woman assigned to my case was named Teresa. She had silver hair cut short, kind eyes, and a way of listening that made me sit straighter. "What do you want, Evelyn?" she asked during our first meeting. The question confused me. "I want my papers back. I want the money accounted for." "Yes," she said. "But beyond that, what do you want your life to look like?" No one had asked me that in a long time, not what was practical. Not what was easiest, not what Daniel preferred. What did I want? I looked down at my hands. They were older than I felt inside, veins raised, fingers bent slightly at the joints. These hands had washed dishes, packed lunches, held fevered foreheads, signed checks, folded tiny socks, scrubbed floors, prayed in the dark. "I want a door that opens to my own key," I said. Teresa smiled softly. "Then let's start there." With her help, I applied for a small apartment in a senior community that was not the place Daniel had chosen. This one was modest, independent, with a garden courtyard and a community room where residents argued cheerfully over puzzles. It was not the home I had lost. Nothing would be. But it had sunlight in the kitchen and a window ledge wide enough for herbs. While paperwork moved slowly, my case against Daniel's financial handling moved too. Some money was recovered. Not all. Some explanations were accepted. Others remained ugly. Mr. Howard said we could pursue further legal action, but it would be costly, painful, and uncertain. That decision nearly split me in two. One part of me wanted justice with teeth. I wanted Daniel exposed. I wanted every neighbor, every church member, every colleague to know what he had done. I wanted Claire to feel the shame she had helped place on me. I wanted the world to point at them and say, "You were wrong." Part of me wanted peace, not weakness. Peace. There is a difference between refusing to fight and choosing which battlefield deserves your remaining years. I prayed over it. I cried over it. I talked with Marlene until we both grew hoarse. In the end, I chose accountability without revenge. Daniel returned what could be clearly proven. He signed documents removing his authority from my accounts. He provided written acknowledgement that I had not consented to being locked out or relocated. Mr. Howard kept copies. It was not everything, but it was enough to begin. Daniel came to see me once before I moved into my apartment. We met at a park on a bench beneath a sycamore tree. I chose a public place because love does not require foolishness. He arrived without Claire. He looked tired, not polished tired, truly tired. For several minutes we watched children climbing on the playground. A little boy fell, cried, then ran straight into his mother's arms. Daniel swallowed. "I'm sorry," he said. I closed my eyes. I had imagined those words for weeks. In my imagination, they healed more than words ever can. In real life, they entered me slowly, like rain into dry ground. "What are you sorry for?" I asked. He looked startled. "I'm sorry for how it happened." I opened my eyes. I said. He blinked. "That is not an apology. That is regret about the appearance of cruelty. I need you to know what you did." His jaw trembled. He looked back at the playground. "I locked you out. Yes, I moved your things into bags. Yes, I took control of things that weren't mine to control. Yes, I made you feel like a burden." Throat tightened. "You made me homeless," I said. "For a day, yes, but more than that, you made me homeless inside my own family." Filled his eyes. "I don't know how I became that person," he whispered. I did not comfort him. That may sound harsh, but it was one of the strongest things I have ever done. A mother's arms know how to open automatically. Mine wanted to. They wanted to gather him back into innocence, to say, "You were stressed, sweetheart. You didn't mean it." But he had meant enough of it. And if I rescued him from the pain of facing himself, I would only teach him that my love could still be used as a hiding place. "I know part of how," I said. "You started valuing convenience over compassion. You started calling control help. You started seeing my needs as threats to your comfort. And somewhere along the way, you forgot I was a person before I was your problem." Covered his face. "I'm sorry," he said again, and this time the words sounded different. I nodded. "I believe you are sorry." Looked at me hopefully. "Forgiveness," I continued, "is not a key back into my life without locks. Trust will not return just because you miss it. His hope dimmed, but he did not argue. That was something. We sat together a while longer. Not healed, not destroyed, just two people with a history too deep to erase and a wound too deep to pretend away. When we parted, he asked if he could help me move. I said gently. Marlene and Teresa are helping. The hurt in his face was real. So was my boundary. My apartment was ready on the first Tuesday of June. It was small. The carpet had a stain near the hallway. The cabinets were older than Claire would ever tolerate. The bedroom closet door stuck unless you lifted it slightly. But when the manager handed me the key, I held it in my palm like a sacred object. A key is such a small thing, metal. Teeth. Weight. But after you have stood outside a locked door with your life in trash bags, a key becomes proof of personhood. Marlene brought soup. Teresa brought a potted basil plant. Mr. Howard sent a card that said, "To new beginnings and doors that open." I placed Daniel's childhood photo on the bookshelf, not because the pain was gone, but because love and truth could share a room now. I no longer needed one to erase the other. That first night, I made tea in my own kitchen. I turned the thermostat to exactly the temperature I wanted. I watched television without headphones. I opened every cabinet just because I could. Then I sat by the window and looked at the courtyard below. A woman in a purple robe watered flowers. Somewhere, someone laughed. The world had not ended, though for a while I was sure it had. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "I hope you're settled. I know I don't deserve a reply. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, Mom. I read it twice." Then I placed the phone face down, not out of cruelty. Out of peace. Some replies need time. Some doors open slowly. Some remain closed until the person outside learns how not to break them. I thought of the morning on his porch, the cinnamon rolls growing cold, the silence after the doorbell. I thought of the woman I had been then, confused and ashamed, waiting for someone who had already chosen himself over her. I wanted to go back and sit beside her. I wanted to take her hand and say, "Do not mistake this locked door for the end of your story." It was not. It was the beginning of the part where I stopped begging love to look like safety and started building safety for myself. The next Sunday, I walked to the bakery near my new apartment. My knee still hurt. My cane clicked against the sidewalk. The morning air smelled of rain and fresh bread. I bought one cinnamon roll, not 6. When I returned, I stood before my apartment door and slid my key into the lock. It turned easily. The door opened. And this time I walked into a home that no one could use as a weapon against me.